Chapter 17, Choices. I wouldn't bury my thoughts from her now, because at this point I realized time really wasn't on our side. So I thought, unless the established theories of relativity were wrong, or at least parts of it were wrong, in most of their respects, we would simply die out here, whether they were wrong or right. Amy, we have two choices here. One is to stop and reverse our direction, which will take time and distance to do because it's an unknown factor as far as the strength of the fields out here, because we have never tested this, especially at these distances, for duration of time to reverse. She spoke and said, elaborate. Okay, I have no idea how much opposing force the ship will take in a braking maneuver to reverse our course at these speeds. Too much could rip us apart, too little, and we might drift to a stop in another billion or more miles at the momentum we are traveling at now. If we circle back, it's the same. Billions of miles to do that in a slow arc to proceed to the distance we have to go. Go on. It could take weeks to even come close to the speed we are at. There's a lot of math to do to figure this one out, but prior information and tests were never conducted, so we just don't know what the ship's capabilities are, or how long or fast it would take us in a turn, and any turn would add billions of miles. So what's the other choice? It would be easier to throttle up since we have more acceleration capability and continue with what we are building on and still locked onto. Looks like that star or system we're heading for, that's for sure. Remember, once the circuit is broken, we have to start over again. It's an unknown. We, at this distance, would have tested all this with unmanned ships or drones, but that's not what's going to happen now. The test I might try to see for sure would be, at this speed, is to veer off the line of force we're using and see if it diminishes as we turn. That would be a bad sign. If the numbers of our input when I test this line of force weaken, we could rule out a turning maneuver and we would know our choice at that point. We would need Magic, Square, or Carl here so that they could program the computer to lock onto a closer star to keep our speed up. And I doubt seriously that programming is here right now, because we didn't think about that. We installed the maneuver to avoid an impact and go to the moon and back, and I don't know why it has picked up the star instead of a closer star. The hard drive and programs I replaced, can't change it now because I would have to learn how to do that now, and we are running out of time. We might have to make this a trip for more information and proof of what our craft is capable of and what the real limits are at this time. And that's assuming we would be able to survive this experiment. Whatever we learn, we have to preserve and return the information back home somehow. I see, she answered. Here's what I have. This is what I found out so far. Remember, we loaded the ship with enough supplies for 4 people on board, and now we have double the amount for 2. and we load enough C rations for a problem if we were to encounter a problem. And that's just for our moon visit. And that included oxygen. We each have enough food and drink for 4 and air for a 7-day trip for 4. So that means if we stretch it, we have about 14 or more days of food and drinks and water, plus maybe 3 weeks of air with our reserves. That's something anyway. Sounds about right, I said, so that helps. And we have 1 extra tank of oxygen, which would give us a few more days, so we know that for us time is slowed, and if it came to a stop in here at what Einstein thought would be a barrier, then we wouldn't make it back anyway. If I'm right about this, then our choice is to try to break through the barrier. She added, at that point, we would rely on the computers to bring us out of this trajectory, which would happen as soon as we started a braking maneuver. And that would be to orbit the next star we counter, grab onto its gravity, circle back. That would be our turning point. Is that about right? If there is no barrier? Yep, I said, at that point, we would see that coming and the ship would automatically flip to start a slowdown maneuver. We would then basically wake up in a sense and become more active according to what others are doing in relative time. If they could observe us, or even if our crew could watch us on the cameras now, what they would see would look like we were frozen in time till we break. Don't know what that'll do to us. Amy said then, we have known factors to work with, to start with, and unknown numbers to speculate with, so it's 2 cents of one and 10 cents of another. You got it, I said. Whatever speed we reach, the computer should know when to start the braking maneuver, as long as it's locked onto the turning point, and as long as it knows the distances involved. It will then calculate when to do that. Hopefully, we'll be at the edge of the Kepler system when it starts its braking maneuver, and if we can catch a break, and the braking works, that will take up some time, which changes our time factor according to their time factor. We may get lucky. We can boost off that sun's magnetic field also and its solar winds. Remember, they have a charge also. It would be like surfing a bigger wave since it is a larger star than our sun. Our return trip would be a little quicker, and if we are frozen in time, sooner. If that is the way it is, that would mean we could conserve our resources for longer and possibly make it back alive if that is what happens, which is yet what we need to learn about. We need to know our CAN's top-end capabilities. I then said, add up all of what we just talked about and send them a message. They'll get it sooner or later, and we'll see what happens before we turn around. No matter what, it's a 50% chance either way that we survive, and they will see the logic. Agreed? Agreed. She added some more of our recordings and info and hit send. She was so cute. I'm getting hungry. You want some food? Sure, I said. I'll start to do the calculations, and you go ahead and do what you gotta do. She was still giggling about her last remark because she was going to be the first to test out our facilities. She unhooked herself, smiled, and floated down towards the lower level. I got up and went over, basically floated over to another console that wouldn't interfere with anything important, and began crunching the numbers, and they were very, very large. So it would take time to check and recheck. I had learned how to operate computers on my own, and then for the last 10 years or so I learned all I could from our crew, and I wasn't too shabby myself. But mathematics really pissed me off. We had more computing power on this one ship than NASA used during all of the Mercury and Apollo missions combined. So math wasn't that hard to do. It was just annoying. Amy yelled up at me, "What do you want to drink?" I said, "Bring me a Pepsi and a bottle of water," and they were in squeeze bottles. "Hey," I yelled, "turn on some music, will you?" "Okay," she shouted. She started with Felix Mendelssohn's Fingal's Cave. "Good choice," I shouted. "This is the copy that I love." Amy floated up with containers of lunch and drinks. I kissed her and thanked her. She sat down next to me and strapped in. I asked her, "Well, how did our toilet work?" She said, "Well, not a drop lost, but it's freaky trying to use a new suction system, and I'm not looking forward when it's time to doo-doo." I laughed and said, "I might get the chance first, then you'll know." "You're so cute." She then asked about the shower and if I thought it would work correctly, and I said, Drew and Magic designed it, and from what I could tell, building it, it should work correctly. Some of it was set up like an upholstery cleaner with a suction that would take excess water in as it put water on your body in the shower. Then it would rinse you in the same manner. The whole thing was sealed in a shower cabinet on a vacuum system and a dryer lamp. So you could be totally dry when done. So I didn't see a problem, except for I had to use the bathroom now. All that pee-pee talk made me have to go. "Well, my husband, I'm relieved about that because I have something planned for later." "That's my girl," I said, "and I like you calling me your husband, my wife." My turn now, and I went below. When I came back, she asked, "Well, how did that work out?" "Way better than I thought." "So, my husband, what have you figured so far?" "Okay, here's how it breaks down, and it's not so bad, but first look at the navigation screen." "What do you want me to see?" she asked. "Look close," I said. "What do you see?" She hesitated. "Our speed is now constant." "Yes," I answered. "It's at about 68% the speed of light." "Correct." "How does that work out in our time?" she said. "Well, to be blunt, we'll be long dead before we get to that star system at this speed, so we are left with one other choice, and that comes to mind logically. We need to speed up and see what the top end of this machine is. I think if we keep moving forward one click at a time to see if our calculations work out, that would be the best choice. We have 7 more increments to use to speed up, which is a good thing. Then, if it doesn't help, we could take a chance on stopping or turning, which isn't a good idea since we don't know how good it is at an instantaneous speed that we have accelerated to. If we did a turn, slowing down at this speed would not be a good idea, and we need a programmer to reprogram the computer to lock in on progressive stars as it crosses into our field to move forward in the direction of Earth so as not to lose momentum. And that's the part we think would make this an instantaneous turn in a star field, but we never got to that point. The overall way this worked is we use the Earth, then our Sun, then the machine used the whole electrical output of our solar system. But at this distance, it was a pinprick. The only thing we could do now, that is for sure, is to increase our output at this distance. The boost we got from our Sun and our solar system was now over, as we were attracting to the electrical output of Kepler-62. Our input of power to the machine would probably continue to gain momentum in respect. She was smart as a whip. So we can't break the barrier light speed. It will take less time to get there? No. If we can't break the barrier, it would still take way too long. We have to get past the barrier to beat any kind of time restrictions. So, Earth time, not our time. And if we don't stop with time at or near top end speed, for lack of better words, freeze up with time, we'll be dead before we ever get there anyway. If we turn, our distance will increase, and sooner or later with that turn, our momentum will have to start over. Probably to go to the opposite direction. And I don't know if we can even pick up enough of our Sun's magnetic field from here to make the trip fast enough to survive. All I know is we can build on momentum we have and hope at the same time that Einstein was right. If we can get near the speed of light, time will stop. That will help us. There are several theories about what happens next, but no one's been there to tell us what that is. This is our chance. Then she slumped back into her seat and let out a sigh. Don't be so sad. What I see with the force field tells me that it might be building into a wormhole. With this line of force, would make travel almost instantaneously if we can get the ship to speed. She took a few moments, then looked at me in the eyes and said, "You're my man. Get us out of this. Your destiny and mine can't be this. Death? Not yet. Do it. When we get to level 4, I will run a test to see what happens when we deviate from this line of force." I'm on it, baby doll. The computer is blinking, waiting for me to click level 4. "You waited for my opinion?" she asked quite abruptly, slightly amazed. "Yes, I value your opinion. We're not in agreement. We won't last as husband and wife," I said, assuredly, and added, "It's your life too." As I strapped into my chair, she floated over and grabbed me around the neck and placed her head on my right shoulder, watching the screen while she was parallel with and off the floor. Floating there, she watched me click the tab. It lit up, level 4 power, and then we intently watched. We heard the hum very faintly below us pick up, and the gauge on our screen started to roll the numbers up again, and it worked. We didn't know how far it would go, but it was moving us faster. Then she nibbled on my ear as she witnessed this and asked, "Should we move it to level 5? "No," I said, "let's not push it too hard yet. We'll let it level out, one increment at a time, then top out. Then we'll move it to another notch, make sure everything is good. There's time for now. Now let's eat and relax and check out the view." After we ate, I went to manual and veered us off course slightly to see about the turning. Later, as our speed was increasing, we intently watched the monitors as I started to veer off course slightly. And we got a confirmation as our speed slowed within only 100 miles difference off of the line of natural force we were locked onto. Are we going back on course now? She asked. Yes, already. There. That's all I needed to see. I just resetted us to auto, and we're back where we were. Speed's increasing exponentially again. We have only one choice now. That's right, my love. We both reflected on our lives and watched the stars, knowing we were the only ones blessed with this view. We had 6 flat screens on the wall in a semicircle, which was our view to the outside, so that helped immensely. As far as keeping us from becoming claustrophobic, that is, we had placed these so that we could see every direction around us outside, which included Amy's comm station also. 2 computer screens could be on view in the direction we were going. Those were on our desktops. Amy said, "Look at our sun." It was slightly turning, a slight tinge of red now. I said, "It's the Doppler effect." I looked at the navigation screen. We were at 90% speed of light now. Simply amazing, I said. Check out the rest of the star field. Not all, but many are turning, she stated. Look at the ones in front. They're more blue and white now. Yes, and I believe, Amy, that there is no barrier. How do you know? She asked. Remember that gravity has to be faster than light. If it wasn't, one theory said nothing would orbit the stars in a concentrated form. It can even swallow light, and none of it escapes in a singularity. This is where they are stumped. The math points to infinity. Look at the clocks on our time first. What do you see? Our second hand isn't moving. Oops, there it ticked. Once and now, maybe again. I'm waiting. Now look at the clock on the computer for Earth time. Bring up all of its time, date, year, second, minutes. We've been up here only about 16 hours, and we have almost traveled, but not quite, 1 light year. The Earth clock is cranking out numbers as if in super fast forward, and the time and dates do not match. Yes, I said. When we reach that mark, light speed, 2 years will have passed, and if you send a message back to the crew right now, they would receive it around 2 years later, or almost 2 years. So we need to figure out a better way to communicate at these distances, right? Yes, my wife. We would have to figure that one out later, though, I said. But I have an idea for the return trip. I don't know if it'll work, but it doesn't hurt to try. If I am right about the first part of our journey, then the message may get there quicker on the way back. So there's a different physics we don't know about? Possibly, I said. So any messages you want to send, make them and save them for the return trip. Roger that, she said and giggled. What's so funny? I asked lovingly. I'm going to play with Drew's head when I do send a message. Payback, eh? Yes, sir. What comes around goes around. She then played like she had a mustache to curl, kind of like Snidely Whiplash, and then acted like her fingers were rolling her mustache and snickered at the same time. Yeah, I laughed and said, I can picture you with a mustache. Oh, you can? Yes, and it's not a good look for you. You think so, mister? I'm sure of it, I stated with confidence. I was suddenly attracted to the Orion system as I gazed out, and I then said, aim number one camera at Orion and set it to 1200x. Let's have a look. And while you do that, I'm going to go check our power level, make sure it's not draining faster than it's receiving power, just to be safe. As she did that, and I checked, then reported my findings. So how's that behaving, she asked. It's all good. The faster we go, the more it seems that power is available, so we're good. There's a slight draw as it's about 98-99% capability as far as the speed of the can. So we were good, exactly as predicted, but I had to check. That's a good thing, she said. Check out this view. As she was focusing in on the Horsehead Nebula. Wow, so beautiful, she said as I looked. There's a myth about that constellation. Really, what is it? You see the overall picture of the whole constellation. Yes, I know it's a man with a belt and a sword in one hand and a big cloak or something in the other. Yes, but many of the ancients believed the gateway to heaven was where the center of his body would be, around the navel. I didn't know that. She then asked to continue the conversation. Do you think it's true? I related a story when I accidentally got out of my body once and I decided to go there, since I never tried to go out of my body into space. And it was some other author that I read that claimed that to be true. She did that before astronomers knew about the Horsehead Nebula or that it was even there. She discovered it during one of her out-of-body experiences and went there. And she discovered where she thought the gateway to heaven was, or possibly what might be considered the New Jerusalem to be set down on the earth. Cool, she simply said then. Was she right? She was. I'll tell you about it later, though. It's a long story. I said, now pan number 2 camera to the right, magnify to the same power. What are we looking at now? As the camera was panning over, I said, the Milky Way, the center of our galaxy. I pointed to the center. See that? Yes. Look at all that dust. Behind that, there is a giant black hole. I pointed to the spot there behind that cloud of dust. Check it out, then try the infrared. Okay. Beautiful, she stated. Wow, what a view. Then she added, you're a big romantic, aren't you? For you, I am. Are we still speeding up? I looked over and said, the increments were still moving. We are at about 91% and rising. Life support was optimal. I turned to look at her and her top was off. As I gazed for a moment, she unhooked her belt and floated just out of reach, then pushed off ever so slowly away from me. I unbuckled out of my seat. We both stripped down, and now our clothes were floating in the cabin. I pushed over slowly, and we floated together, embracing, kissing, fondling each other. She whispered, I love you. There were no pressure points interfering against our bodies. It was then that we entered into each other's minds and took over each other's bodies. I felt what the other was experiencing. At first, it felt a little scary, but so amazing. It soon became natural. I was her, she was me, and we were both would be working each other and immediately knew our bodily limits while controlling our movements precisely. Back and forth our souls went. No other sexual experience could compare to this. This went on longer than any other sexual experience I have ever known. There were no pressure points on the body whatsoever, and that released the mind, and she, when in my mind, could control my release when I couldn't, and while in her body and mind I could feel waves of orgasms that I never experienced before. And with her help I did not stop till the female body continued to that final climax, and that happened perfectly together. She had given me part of that control so that I could feel and experience that too. She was giving this to me unselfishly, and I had to ask her, what just happened? Did what just happened happen? Yes, I always wanted to know what it was like from a man's perspective. Likewise, I said, it's kind of cool being in both places at the same time. How did you do that, or rather, how did that happen? Well, as far back as I can remember, I had an ability to read people's minds, but not completely. Also, premonitions, but mostly when I dream. But now it is enhanced tremendously somehow. You have some of that ability, obviously, also. I asked, are we sharing these powers? Are they improving? It seems that I can read what you are thinking more often. You help with that. I just haven't told you till now, so it seems to be rubbing off on you too. I don't know about the premonitions. That exchange was as new to me as it was to you. I've never experienced an exchange of souls ever, so yes, it seems to be intensifying. What do you think the cause is? She replied, our abilities that we have may be intensifying because of being wrapped in the ship's magnetic field, perhaps. What else could it be? We do know that magnetic fields can manipulate what the mind sees, does, hears, etc. They've experimented with it. Could be a combination of both or all of the above, and maybe help to enhance dominant, or rather dormant, capabilities. I don't know for sure, not yet. I have had a touch of the ability of reading people, like knowing when someone is behind me looking at me and thinking about me when I can't see them. This would explain what abductees say about encounters of the third and fourth kind, what they say about their captors speaking into their minds directly and being read. I went on. Exposure to these fields, from what I know, could have enhanced their abilities to send and receive, and now our abilities, perhaps. I have one other ability, but only a slight ability of telekinesis. So I guess we'll find out, she said. Well, I love your abilities more than ever. What do you think about that? I love you more than ever, she reiterated. I have read your soul. You're special, real, and truthful, and God is with you. So maybe these are gifts from God. I fear nothing now and will never fear again. I was just thinking, I told her. When others would have gone berserk over this impossible situation, you kept your head together. You are cool, calm, and steady as a rock. You amaze me. Thanks for not freaking out on me. You're awesome. Because I am not scared now. Some of that is coming from my belief and what I read about you. You're awesome was all I could say, and then my mind wandered, thinking about what we needed to do now. She beat me to it. Let's try out the rest of our facilities and clean up, and I'll make us a dinner soon. What do you say? She asked this as she headed below to complete her mission. I replied, sounds like a plan, my love. Then we'll do a final systems check and then we need to sleep and do that in shifts till we figure out our fate. We get to try out our beds tonight, or is it night? We're going to have to set up an alarm system to tell us when our needs should arise for waking and sleeping. Yes, my love, I asked, not knowing where behind me she was at this point. Yes, my love, she said as she shouted, getting into our showers. Then I wondered if she really shouted. I wondered, did she hear me or read my mind? She shouted back, I heard you. So I thought, how? Like this? So now she was in my mind. Next, Chapter 18, 24 hours since launch.